We're still in the month of Elul. Not just still, we're in the beginning of the month. And as I mentioned last week, the Torah portions that we read in this month must have some connection to the month of Elul. The month of Elul, as we said, was the month of introspection, the month of stock-taking, the month of making amends, the month of preparation for the new year, purifying ourselves. And the Torah portion that we read this week is Ki Teitzei. It's talking about going out and fighting a war. So that immediately what comes to mind is that being a good person doesn't come without struggle. In the words of our sages of the Talmud, we are all in possession of a Yetzer Tov and a Yetzer Hara, a good inclination and an evil inclination. In Hasidic terminology, the description of a human being is that we are in possession of two souls, two personalities. We have a split personality. We have a nefesh elokis, a godly soul, a nefesh habamis, and an animal soul. The animal soul pulls us in one direction. The godly soul pulls us in another direction. So this is a constant struggle, perennial war existing within ourselves. And the month of Elul is a month when we have to learn how to cope with that struggle in preparation for the new year. As I mentioned last week, the Torah portions that we already read in the month of Elul, or right before Elul, was Re'eh, where God says, "Behold, I am placing before you a blessing and a curse." And the blessing is if you follow all the commandments, and we know that God gives us the strength, He gives us the power to overcome all the obstacles. Last week it was about appointing judges in your cities, that we have to use our mind, our intellect, serving as a judge to make sure that all the gates, all the entry points in our body, our eyes, our ears, our nose, our mouth, bring in only healthy and wholesome influences, not just kosher food, but kosher ideas, kosher experiences. That's so crucial in the month of Elul. And this week we're actually talking about how to fight a war. So the Torah portion, when it talks about a literal war, can be used as a metaphor for fighting this emotional battle that we all have to engage in. And the Torah begins with the words, "If you go out to wage war upon your enemies, and God, your God, delivers them into your hand, and you seize their captives." So without going any further, there's already a very powerful message here. It's a message that we spoke about every year, but it bears repeating. The way the Torah describes going to war, it doesn't just say if you go to war. If you go out to war, that's point number one, which I'll soon explain. And right after that it says upon your enemy, not against your enemy, but upon your enemy. So the Alter Rebbe and subsequent Chabad Rebbes explained that going to war is a process that requires going out of our domain. That means a Jew has to know that his or her domain is a state of peace, a state of tranquility, a state of serenity, a state of holiness. We have weekdays and we have Shabbat, we have the Sabbath. Weekdays, there are 6 weekdays and only one Shabbos in a week. Yet, what defines who we are? It's Shabbos that defines our true essence. The weekdays are needed. It says in the Talmud, if you don't have what to eat during the week, if you don't prepare food during the week, you won't have what to eat on Shabbos. That's not just a literal meaning. That also has a figurative meaning, that if you don't struggle during the week to overcome negativity, you won't be able to be restful and engage in pleasurable activities on Shabbos. But ultimately we have to recognize that Shabbos is the goal. Shabbos is our default position. Before God created the world, there was perennial Shabbos. There was no world to disturb the Shabbos. So every 7 days, God gives us a repetition of the original pristine holiness that existed prior to creation of the world. And that is what I explained a few weeks ago, that the word Shabbos, Shabbat, has the letters that read Tashev, return. return to what? To return to your original status. That's what Shabbos is. Shabbos, we're able to rejuvenate ourselves because we go back to our source, and that's what gives us rejuvenation and gives us the power to be able to wage the war during the week. So the Torah is telling us over here, Ki Teitzei l'milchama, when you go out to wage war, that means war is not your original position, that's your going out position. Sometimes a war is necessary. We're living in a world of imperfection. That's lesson number one, that we have to know that our default position, our innate, inherent, and essential status is that we are Shabbos people, we are peace people, and it's very important for Jews to remember that even when we have to engage in war, we crave peace more than anything else. The word Shalom is one of the most ubiquitous words in Jewish literature. We greet each other with the word Shalom. We usher in the Shabbat with the word Shalom Aleichem. The Mishnah, the most important Jewish text after the Chumash, after the Bible, ends with the word Shalom. Our primary prayer ends with the word Shalom, and it's ubiquitous all over. Mashiach, it says, the Messiah is going to announce the idea of Shalom, of peace. That's what we crave more than anything else. But in order to get there, sometimes you have to go out of the peace to wage war. So a Jew has to know when he comes to the month of Elul and he has to wage war, he has to know that that's not his essential identity. Essential identity is holiness, is Shabbat, is peaceful, is a Shabbos, a Shabbat existence. That's lesson number one. Lesson number two, it says when you wage war, go out to wage war upon your enemy, not against your enemy, but upon your enemy. What that tells us is that when you look at your enemy, your adversary, sometimes you look at the enemy as your equal. We're two sides of an issue, and we're going to fight for our side. No, it's not two sides of an issue. There's only one side of the issue. A Jew has to be convinced that the realm of holiness is the true, essential status of who he or she is. And the enemy is inferior to you. That we know that, and that translates as confidence that we're going to win. Why are we so confident we're going to win? Because we are superior to our enemy. Now, some people will bristle when you hear the word superiority. How could we believe we're superior? That's elitist, that's chauvinistic. Well, if you can't believe that good is superior to evil, then we have a problem. Then evil will always prevail, because when you measure good versus evil, the difference is that evil is always more in your face. Evil is more overt. Good is concealed. Good is hidden. All the good that was ever accomplished never left the world. It's piled up beneath the surface. So in order to find the good, you have to dig deeper. Evil is always on the surface. Evil is superficial. So evil could look intimidating and look very, very powerful because it's right in our eyes. You open up a newspaper, 90% of the newspaper is about negativity. You read novels, you read whatever you read. There's just so much about conflict, about negativity. But that's only skin deep. Deeper beneath the surface are the elements and the powers of goodness. And therefore, when you're fighting your enemy, you know you are going to prevail because you are superior. You have all the accumulated goodness, and that good itself is inherently superior to evil. Evil is a smokescreen. Evil is a facade. Evil is a cover-up to the goodness that lies beneath the surface. Most people, if you ask them what is the default position of the world, they say it's negative. No, it isn't. The default position of the world is positive. Goodness, godliness is the more superior force, and it's deeper, though the evil sometimes poses a formidable challenge because it's more in your face, more overt. When you know that you are inherently good, you're an inherently peaceful person, you're inherently a Shabbat person, and that the evil that exists is there beneath the surface, beneath you, you are superior to it, and in order to experience that superiority, you have to dig deeper beneath yourself. That's what the month of Elul is all about. Elul, the word Elul is related to an Aramaic word that it translates as spying. This is the month when we all become members of the Mossad or the CIA. We're all spying, but what are we spying? We're digging deep into ourselves, looking for the goodness in ourselves, excavating the goodness, finding the diamonds that are buried beneath every one of us. The Baal Shem Tov always interpreted a verse where it says, "You are a land of desire," God says to the Jewish people through the prophet. What that means, the Baal Shem Tov explained, is that every one of us has treasures beneath the surface. If you really ask me, how do you classify Jews? Most people would say, well, they're Orthodox, there's Conservative, there's Reform, there's Reconstructionist, there's Hasidic, there's Ultra-Orthodox. That's all nonsense. Those are labels. If you want to have a good definition of the different categories of Jews, there are Jews who have treasure, and they know they have a treasure, and they take advantage of their treasure. There are Jews who know that they have a treasure, but don't take advantage of it. It's like having $1 million in the bank, and you don't bother to take the money out. I'll just share a little cute anecdote about a Jew I visited in prison who was there because he was a expert with computers. He went into the computers, into the bank accounts of the wealthiest people, multi-millionaires, and he found that there were accounts that were idle. The people who owned those accounts didn't even know they had them. These are such real rich people that they had so many accounts that they didn't even keep track of them. So what did he do? He would steal the interest from all these accounts. And when he was caught, the people didn't want to prosecute him because they were grateful to him because he revealed to them that they had these treasures they didn't know about. So there are people who don't know they have treasures. They forget about their treasures. And there are people who know they have treasures, but they temporarily forget about it. They don't take advantage of it. They're too lazy to take advantage of it. And then there's a third category, very, very sadly, that doesn't even know they have a treasure. They don't even know there's something special about being a Jew. I remember as a rabbi on campus, we were working and getting a young man out of a cult. And I'm talking to his roommate who was Jewish, who was trying to get him out of the cult as well. And I remember saying, this is my biggest culture shock, I remember saying to him, it's so sad that this kid is going to cults to find meaning in life when there's so much in Judaism. And this other student says, no, there's nothing in Judaism. It's so sad that this kid grew up in a Jewish environment, went to a Jewish Hebrew school of a temple, but knew nothing of Judaism. He knew a little things here and there. He knew about holidays. Maybe he could sing a few nursery rhymes, Jewish nursery rhymes. But the depth of Judaism, the breadth of it, the extended knowledge that Judaism has, and the beauty of it, and the warmth of it, and all the other things about Judaism, it's phenomenal. But there are people who don't even know they have a treasure. There are people who know they have it but don't take use of it. And there are people who know it and they take advantage of it. They avail themselves of all these treasures. So when we know that we have these treasures and we take advantage of them and we dig deep in the month of Elul, the month of spying, then we have no worry about waging this war. Then we will win the battle. And not only will we win the battle, but then it says we will seize their captives. That means we will even capture them, that the evil forces will be transformed. That's the ultimate goal. The ultimate goal is not to fight evil, and the evil remains, and not even to destroy the evil. The ultimate goal is that evil should be converted into goodness. And when we talk about the month of Elul, it's the month of tshuva, of repentance, of return. The Talmud speaks of two kinds of returning to God. One is out of fear. The reason why people try to shape up and change their ways, amend their ways, is because they're afraid of the consequences. They're afraid that God is going to punish them. They're afraid they're going to be looked down upon by other people. People want their reputations to be clean. So people will change because of fear. That's good. That's fine. But it's not ideal. Ideal reason for changing is because you do it out of love. When you realize that when you sinned, you drove a wedge between yourself and God. You distance yourself from God. You distance yourself, from your own soul, from your own inner holiness. And that, it says, but I don't want to be distant. I want to be close to God. I want to be close to my soul. I want to be close to the truth. So it motivates you. It's not a fear, but it's done out of love. I want to get closer to God. And because it's motivated by love, it has the power to take the negative and turn it into positive. Because the love was motivated by the sin that you did. When you realize how far you have traveled away from the truth, from God, from your own soul. So therefore, the sin becomes the engine that drives you closer to God, and therefore the sin is converted into a mitzvah. I told the story a few days ago, but the great Hasidic Rabbi Levi Yitzchak of Berditchev, before Yom Kippur, he summons the biggest sinner in town. He was a thief. He was a no-goodnik. He had sin, he did everything that he can think of that is against the Torah. And Rabbi Levi Yitzchak says to him, I'm envious of you. I'm jealous of you. And the man looks at the rabbi and says, Rabbi, you're mocking me. You're making fun of me. You're jealous of me. You know I'm the biggest sinner in town. So the rabbi says, yes, but if you would do tshuva, if you would change, all your sins will be converted into mitzvahs. I can never do so many mitzvahs that would come close to the number of sins that you committed, that you can transform them and convert them into virtues. So that's the ultimate goal, that not only will we wage war upon our enemy, that we're above our enemy, and we will win the war, the enemy will be delivered into our hands, but we will transform, he will become our own captive. We will transform the negativity. One of the things about this parsha, and it's appropriate for the month of Elul, is it has more mitzvahs in it than any other parsha of the Torah. More than, I think, 12% of all the 613 commandments are mentioned in this week's Torah portion. And there is broad categories of commandments. The laws concerning wars, the laws concerning returning lost objects, the laws of marriage and divorce, and many other areas of law that are covered in this Torah portion. So if you would want to sum up what this Torah portion is, I would use two words: mitzvah therapy. That ultimately people want to change. The best way of changing is just doing good. Sometimes a person says, I'm not ready to engage in introspection. I'm not ready to engage in deep soul searching. It's not comfortable. I can understand that. That's something that some people have a hard time doing that. Just do good. Just do another mitzvah. And the mitzvahs will accumulate, and that will refine you, and that will make you a better person. So in the month of Elul, while we do focus on tshuva, on repentance, on return, on meditation, on introspection, that's all true, but we shouldn't forget the mitzvah therapy. Just doing mitzvahs themselves have the greatest effect on a person. One of the great medieval authors, known as the Chinuch, explains, why does God want us to do mitzvahs? Let's say we have a mitzvah of putting on tefillin. We put tefillin on our head and our arm. The idea is to get our mind and our actions and our heart involved in serving God. So why can't we just meditate on that? Just meditate on your mind and meditate on your heart, and try to generate these emotions. And the answer is twofold. Number one, we do the mitzvah because that's God's will, and there's nothing greater than creating a bond with God through fulfilling His will. But there's another reason why we focus on the mitzvah, and this is what the medieval chinuch says, and that is because we are physical beings, and we are influenced by physical behavior. In psychology, there's a school of behavioral psychology where you focus on action, because action makes a person's behavior, not only behavior different, but it makes the person's personality different. If you are not a kind person, for example, you're not used to doing kind things for others. But if you keep on doing kind things, at first reluctantly, at first begrudgingly, at first without any enthusiasm, as time goes on, it'll become easier and easier. You won't be reluctant, And not only will you not be reluctant, you'll begin to develop a taste for it, an appetite for doing good, until you'll enjoy it, until you'll thrive on it. But it won't happen through meditation, just by sitting down and meditating. You know what? I should be a kind person. It's so beautiful to be kind. The meditation won't get you to become kind. It won't change you. But the action will change you. So that's one of the messages of this week's Torah portion, the idea of mitzvah therapy, behavioral therapy. One of the mitzvahs in this Torah portion is a negative commandment, that there are two nations that we're not allowed to allow them in our community. That means a Jew cannot marry a man who is either from the country called Ammon or Moab. Even after 10 generations, they are banned from entering into the Jewish community. No other nation has that ban. And what's the reason? The Torah gives a reason. It says, because when we left Egypt and we were in the desert, they didn't greet us with bread and water. They didn't offer any hospitality. And the second reason is they also hired this heathen prophet Bilam to curse us. And God didn't listen to Bilam, and he converted the curses into blessings because God loves you. That is the reason why we don't want to have anything to do with this nation, Ammon and Moab. Now, there's an exception to this rule. We know that King David was a great-grandson of Ruth. Ruth was from a Moabite princess, and she converted to Judaism, and she married King David's great-grandfather, Boaz. But that was different because it only applied to women, Jewish women, not marrying men, because the men are the ones who would go out and greet people, and they didn't greet us, and they didn't offer us any hospitality. Now, commentaries point out that there's a word that is superfluous. It says, al-devar, because of the matter that they didn't come to us before when we left Egypt with bread and water. And that word is unnecessary. It could have just started the verse, because they didn't greet you with bread and water. Why does it say because of the matter? So one of the commentaries explains that it's not, the word devar in Hebrew can mean matter, it can mean word. That we should translate it not just as matter because of the matter, but because of the word, which means that it wasn't just that they didn't perform an act of kindness. See, there are two kinds of transgressions, two kinds of sins. There's a sin of passion, where you couldn't resist the temptation, and you committed the crime. It's a crime of passion. There's no excuse for it in Judaism. A person has the ability and the requirement to control himself, but nevertheless, it's mitigated somewhat because they don't have the desire to do what's wrong, because they want to do what's wrong, because they're just tempted to do it and they couldn't control themselves. But when someone conspires to do something, they talk about it, they prepare themselves for it, that's a sign that they're inherently corrupt. It's a personality flaw. Everyone, except for a few very saintly people, has temptation, and sometimes they succumb to it. That's more or less normal. Doesn't make it right, but it's normal. But people who conspire, who find ways of getting other people to commit the same crime. It's the whole nation of Ammon and Moab, not one person came out to greet the Jews and offer them some hospitality, not one. Although they were cousins. Ammon and Moab were sons of Lot, who was Abraham's nephew. So they should have had a little bit of a decency and treat the Jews with some hospitality. So if it was some people who didn't do it, we can understand. They were stingy, they were not nice people. But when on a whole nation, that means they had to tell people, they had to spread the word. They put it on the internet, they sent emails to everyone 3,300 years ago, that people should not do anything to help the Jews. The conspiracy is a sign that they're power of speech was polluted, corrupted, and that they were inherently evil people, and we don't want to bring those genes into our midst. But I think there's another way of explaining this. Another explanation why it uses the words al-devar, because of the matter or because of the word. The word in the context, there are several words in Hebrew for the word word. We're using the word word a lot. Devar is one of them. King Solomon in Ecclesiastes talks about a king. He says, Devar melech shilton. How does a king rule? The king doesn't rule with his hands or his feet. The king rules with his mouth, with his speech. The king issues an edict. He says, I want this policy done. And then it spreads to the whole country and everyone follows it, hopefully, if it's a good king. And that's why in Kabbalistic terminology, the attribute of malchus, of royalty, is referred to as God's speech. Just like a king rules with speech, God rules the world. He controls the world with his own divine speech. What is the problem with Ammon and Moab? That they wanted to corrupt the power of royalty that was given to the Jewish people. Every Jew, the Baal Shem Tov taught us, has a spark of Mashiach in him or her. That means we all have a power of royalty. And this power of royalty has to be used the right way. And what did they do? They used it the wrong way. They used their power the wrong way. And not only that, they got this heathen prophet, this vile, evil individual, Bilam, to curse us, to take away our power. And what were one of his curses? Although they turned into blessings, we can figure out what his curses were about royalty. He was predicting the coming of Mashiach. And he says, I see it. So he wanted to destroy that power of royalty. And therefore, we're not allowed to engage with this nation, because this power of royalty, if it's corrupted, it loses our ability to have influence. Now, on a simple level, what is our greatest power? If someone asks you, what is the power of the Jewish people? The anti-Semites will say, well, we know how to make a lot of money. That's not what makes Jews powerful. What makes Jews powerful is the power to survive. We are the ultimate survivors. Our ability to survive and to flourish, not just survive, but to thrive and flourish. Just a few years after the Holocaust, look what happened to Israel. Israel becomes one of the most powerful forces in the world, economically, scientifically, medically. It's something that no other nation has ever had that power. We have maintained our Judaism. Every country in which we lived, every empire that dominated us tried to get us to lose our identities, to either destroy us physically or to destroy us spiritually. And we resisted and we prevailed. And they're gone. They're the ash heap of history. They're not even footnotes, most of them. Or as Rabbi Y.Y. Jacobson says, that they can only be found in what's the site? I have a mental block. That had the encyclopedia. Whatever it is, the encyclopedia. That's where you can find them. And we wrote the encyclopedia. That was his joke. At any rate, that power is the power of Mashiach, the spark of Mashiach that we have in all of us, the power of royalty, the power to persevere, and that power is through our speech. If we didn't have the power of speech, we couldn't teach Torah. And teaching Torah is the most important endeavor of a Jewish person. There's nothing more important for a Jew than to study Torah and to teach Torah and to spread the words of Torah. You need power of speech for that. And that power of speech is the power of royalty that we have to exercise control over our environment, exercise control over the negatives outside externally and the negatives internally. And when Ammon and Moab tried to destroy that powerful force of speech that's connected to royalty, they can't become part of the Jewish people. There's a saying of the Kotzker Rebbe, one of the great Hasidic masters, that royalty was not native to the Jewish people. We borrowed it from Ammon and Moab. They were the ones who had royalty, and we took it from them. We got it by the fact that Ruth was converted and produced King David. That produced the real royalty, the permanent royalty. And they wanted that royalty to be perverted and corrupted, and God says, we're not going to let that happen. One of the things that says about Bilam, when he cursed the Jews, the Talmud says there's a certain fragment of time during the day that God gets upset, as it were, and if you curse someone during that time, the curse will come true. So the question is asked, Tosfos, the commentary on the Talmud, asks, and the Talmud asks, well, how much time is it? Just the time that it takes to say the word rega, moment, a half a second. So the Tosfos commentary asks, what curse could you say in a half a second? And the Tosfos answers, you say the word kalem. Kalem means destroy them. But if you look at those three letters, kalem, if you read them backwards, it reads melech, king. What Bilam wanted is to destroy the power of royalty that the Jewish people are in possession of. The power of royalty, not to dominate other nations. The Maimonides says the great sages and prophets of Israel didn't crave for Mashiach because they wanted to control everyone. That's a pagan, non-Jewish dream of controlling the world. Every empire wants to control the world. The Chinese want to control the world. The Russians wanted to control the world. The Nazis wanted to control the world. We don't harbor that desire to control the world. What we harbor the desire is to increase in the study of Torah and fulfillment of the commandments and elevating the world to a godly plane. So our power of royalty is not to control the world in terms of dominating the world politically and militarily. Our goal is to dominate the negativity of the world, to transform it into positive energy. That's the power of royalty that we have. And that's why Ammon and Moab don't fit into that scheme, because they wanted to corrupt that power of royalty, and we have to make sure to preserve it, to make sure that our leadership is a leadership of ethics and morality, a leadership of Torah, a leadership of holiness. The Torah portion ends with the commandment to remember what Amalek did to us. Among the evil nations, we already encountered Ammon and Moab, and now we're encountering another nation that started up with us even before Ammon and Moab, and that's Amalek. Amalek is a nation that tried to attack the Jews and attacked them as soon as they left Egypt, and we're commanded to always remember them. And the Torah then says, when God will bring you to the land of Israel and all your enemies will be vanquished, then you have to obliterate the memory of Amalek. Amalek is considered to be the arch enemy of the Jews. What is it about Amalek? Amalek is a genocidal enemy. Amalek is not content with just harming the Jews, as many other nations did. They wanted to destroy us totally. Ammon and Moab didn't say we want to destroy them, we just wanted to take away their power from them, wanted to take away their ability to control themselves, to be their power of royalty. Amalek wants total obliteration of the Jewish people. And we are commanded to destroy Amalek. But Amalek is not just an external nation, it's also an internal one. Amalek also exists within every one of us. The word Amalek, the way the Torah describes Amalek is he met you on the way. He bumped into you while you were traveling. But the Hebrew word for meeting, confronting, bumping into, karcha, also means cooled you off. Amalek desensitizes people, makes you not feel anything spiritual, makes you not feel anything meaningful, makes you dead emotionally. And when you're dead emotionally, you can't be motivated to do anything. Also, the word Amalek, numerically, in Hebrew, all letters are numbers, adds up to the word suffix, which means doubt. Amalek sows doubts in you. When a person is trying to become a better person, especially in the month of Elul, what happens is the evil inclination in us, the little Amalek in us, starts to sow doubts in us and starts telling us, maybe it's not so important to do what you're doing, maybe it's not going to work, all sorts of doubts. And the purpose of those doubts is to desensitize us. And we're commanded to obliterate that Amalek. The worst possible thing is to engage in a way of life in which we harbor those doubts and we entertain those doubts. Now, those doubts has to be distinguished from questions. There's nothing wrong in Judaism with asking questions. Not only is there nothing wrong, it's advisable, it's encouraged to ask questions. But a doubt is different. A doubt is where as soon as you do something right, you always have these gnawing feelings that maybe what I'm doing is not right. And if the objective is to get you to do more good and to have more feeling, then it's not a bad thing. But usually doubts demoralize you and desensitize you. And that's why the doubts are something we have to get rid of. And there's no greater joy. One great wise man said, it's quoted in Jewish sources, there's no greater joy than the resolution of doubts. So we conclude the Torah portion on a note that brings to joy, because the month of Elul, even though it's a month of introspection, it's a month of joy because God gives us the opportunity to change and to transform ourselves. There's no greater source of joy. May everyone have a good, prosperous, and successful month of Elul and a good and sweet year.